One of the great joys of hand spinning is working with beautiful colours. However, it is all too easy to get a lovely selection that you think are going to look so fabulous together, and you spin them up and you create a slightly muddy, rather disappointing yarn. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about spinning Marl yarns, which is a great way to use up your odds and ends and avoid those muddy mistakes. If you're new here, my name is Becca. I'm a hand spinner, natural dyer and newbie weaver, and you're very welcome to my slightly echoey conservatory here in West Wales. If you're an old friend, lovely to have you back. So what is a Marl yarn? Okay, I have a bit of an admission to make. I have been spinning Marl yarns for nearly 20 years and didn't realise that that is what they were called. So it's not until I was reading the spring edition of Spin-Off magazine, which is all about using colour, when I actually was able to put a name to what I had been spinning. So what are marls? Essentially, they are when you take two or more singles of different colours and ply them together. So we think of those as our classic barbershop pole yarns, and that's very typically how you'll see them as commercial yarns in your yarn shop. So I've got some examples to show you, so I'm going to turn the camera around and we'll have a little look at those. So here I have some classic, just 2-ply, one dark ply, one light ply, and that is really how you'll often see them. And this is Welsh mountain sheep, so one black sheep, one white sheep. It also works really well with something like Jacob, where you get two different colours, and it's a great way of getting an interesting pattern. And I think we always have to bear in mind that we're not just making yarn, we're actually making the building blocks of fabric. So I've got another one here. Obviously that's a sort of chunky yarn, and that's exactly what we've got. There's less contrast here, and less contrast does work quite nicely. So here what I've done is I've used a hand painted comb top, and it was variegated colours, and I've just spun that and then plied it with a undyed single, and then that knits up really beautifully. And then the other thing I'm going to show you is actually a 3-ply, and we're going to make a 3-ply today. So this is a sock, and you can see how it knits up. Now, you probably don't realise that there are 3 plies here. And the reason you probably can't tell that is because 2 of the plies I've used, 2 of the singles, are in the same tonal range. And because Fibre has that tendency to do optical blending, it looks like I've got just 2 plies. And it's a great way of using odds and ends up, because if you use the trick that actually we get optical blending, if you've got a couple of colours that are very similar but you haven't got enough of each one, then yeah, do a 3-ply, ply it with an undyed single, and it looks like you've got 2-ply. So today I'm going to be making another 3-ply, and I'm going to be using my good old colour wheel as a way of choosing the colours. So rather than having a really high contrast, so we've got a dark single and a light single giving us very high contrast, we're going to have less contrast, and that's going to give us more of sort of the optical blending effect that we have. And I don't know how it's going to turn out. We'll have a look. I've pulled some colours from the stash. Now I've been recently dyeing with weld, so I've got a nice bright yellow. I also did a little bit of dyeing with some dandelion and iron, and that's given me a grey. So I'm going to again turn the camera around and show you what I've got, and also just talk a little bit about colour theory. So one of the great ways of not getting those kind of muddy colours and maybe getting a clashing colour is to use colours that are in the same tonal range or to use different tones of the same colour. And I think we quite often say, if we say monochrome, we're thinking black and white or grayscale, possibly. But actually, if we use a range of pinks or a range of oranges or a range of greens, we can get a really interesting yarn without creating that mud. Okay, so let's just have a little look and see what I've pulled out of the stash. So here is the yellow, the weld dyed fibre. And you can see it's quite a nice vibrant yellow. And I'm just looking at my colour wheel here, and you can get these online really easily. I'll leave a link in the description. And what we've got here is tints, tones and shades. So what we've got here is the pure colour, then a tint, a tone and a shade. So what we can do with our 3-ply is we can go for the pure colour, and then we could choose a tint or a tone and a shade. So let's have a little look what I've got. So this is our pure colour. Then I would call that a tint, and that is dyed with, what is that dyed with? Good question. Note to self, label everything. I say that every time I pull things out of the stash. I think it was a mixture of marigold and Dyer's chamomile, I seem to remember. Anyway, it's slightly paler, so that we could have that together. And then we've got some of these chartreuse, sort of greeny yellows. So that could be a shade, or I could use the grey, which would be a tone. This is the colour combination I'm going to go for. I'm going to use the pure colour, then the slightly sort of grey one, which is my tone, and then my sort of chartreusey green. They are actually slightly different colours, but I think they're close enough that once they're spun, it'll be fine. And that is my shade. So I've got some useful resources for you. Colour wheel, excellent resource, really not very much money. You can get them online very easily, or your local art shop. So I can highly recommend one of those. I like the ones that kind of have the spinny bits, because that is a technical term. So, and this one shows you complementary colours, split complementaries, all sorts of things. So it's a really, really great resource, that. Then Spin-Off magazine, my favourite spinning magazine. I do have a subscription to this. I will link that below. And if you get a subscription, then you also get access to digital copies of the back issues, because this was spring 2025, all about colour. And obviously the print version is, I mean, you can probably still buy the print version, but if you get a subscription, then the next one I'm about to get is going to be summer 2025. So Gillian Moreno's excellent book has a big section on colour and yarny texture, which I always say wrong, yarny texture. Thank you, get it right. So big section on working with colour, very, very good book. I would say if you're a beginner spinner, it's probably not the right book for you. But if you have got to the point where you're quite happy and you're spinning kind of reasonably good yarn, then this is kind of the next stage. So if you're more of an intermediate spinner, I would say this book is probably the right one for you. She particularly concentrates on spinning for knitting. Then my all-time favourite book, and very difficult to get hold of. It is out of print. You do see secondhand copies. They are hideously expensive. So if you can find one that's kind of less than, I would say, £80, because I've seen them for £80, snap it up. Colour in Spinning by Deb Menz. And I mean, it really is just a phenomenally good book. I mean, she does go into a lot of detail, and she is not a natural dyer. So if you are exclusively a natural dyer, maybe it's not a book for you, but just for her colour theory and the way she works with colour, it is just a brilliant book. Right, I'm off to do some spinning and I will come back to you when I'm plying. I have enough spun up just to make a little sample, and I will knit that up, and probably at the end of the video you'll be able to see that knitted up. But I'm going to ply this now and I'll just show you how I do that. So you can get little doobries to separate your yarn when you're spinning 3-ply. I don't, because I just lose little kind of notions and doobries, so I just separate them between my fingers like that. And then, yep, scrappy leader, always got a scrappy leader. And because I spun it clockwise, I'm going to spin it, I'm going to ply it rather, anti-clockwise. And I really like the way this looks already. So I think once it's knitted up, the predominant colour is going to be yellow, because that was the true colour, the strongest colour. But just because we've got the green and the grey in there, I'm going to add interest to it. I think they're lovely colours together. I mean, it's quite subtle, but I don't think that matters. I'm going to make another video that's going to be using complementary colours, and that will be a 2-ply. Then I will do another 3-ply, but I'll use split complementary colours. And then I'm going to have a look at how we can use the theory to use multiple shades in a 2-ply. And then at some point in the next few weeks, I have a hand-painted roving from Kate at Hilltop Cloud, and I'm going to spin that up using the methods and the ideas that I've been discussing in this mini-series. Let's just have a look how, oh, that is, oh, that's super. That is super, even if I do say so myself. I think particularly if you are somebody that does a lot of your own dyeing, you do end up with lots of sort of bits and pieces and experiments, and they're generally not enough for a whole skein. So actually using this method is a great way of using up your little bits and pieces. And I'm already really pleased with the way this is looking, and I'm definitely, well, I'm going to see how it knits up, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to spin a bit more of this. One of my mottos is always be knitting socks. In order to do that, you have to always be spinning sock yarn. And I've sort of been doing my own little experiment of which fibre I like best for sock yarn and what is lasting the best. And ages ago, I spun a 3-ply after vowing I was never going to spin 3-ply for socks. I was just going to use 2-ply because it was perfectly fine. Well, I think I'm converted to 3-ply, and as this is mostly Welsh mule, which makes excellent socks, then I think I will be making sock yarn. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments. If I don't know the answer, then we do have a really fabulous community of hand spinners, and they will always jump on and answer anything I don't know the answer to. I'm also always delighted to have your suggestions for other videos that you would like to see on the channel. So put those in the comments. I can't promise I'll do all of them, but I do try and actually make videos people want to watch. I will also put a link to my newsletter in the description below, and I try and have that out weekly with a roundup of what's been on the channel and some helpful hints and tips, particularly if you are a new hand spinner. And as a thank you for signing up to my newsletter, you get a nice little freebie, and I've got a beginner's guide to mordanting wool with alum for natural dyeing. So it's a PDF, and that is my thank you to you for signing up to the newsletter. I'm going to finish this yarn right away so I can then knit it up, and so you can actually see it. Quite often I let my yarns sit for quite a while before I actually finish them, but I'm going to finish it right away. I think there is quite a big discussion around whether you actually need to let your yarns sit. It's the way I was taught to do it. It's always been my habit to let them have a bit of a rest, at least 24 hours. But I think a lot of people have done some work to show that it doesn't actually make that much difference, or if it makes any difference at all. But I think you get comfortable with working in a certain way, or I certainly do. Right, I'm just about at the end of this, so I will come back to you when the yarn is finished and I've knitted up a little sample. So I've come outside in the hopes that you're actually going to be able to see this properly. Put it against something white, and I can see, and I hope you can see, that you've got the yellow, the green and the grey showing up, but it's sort of in a marbled effect across the knitting. I think it's worked really well. I hope it inspires you to have a little experiment yourself. See if you can create your own 3-ply marl. And I think I've just got one last thing to say, which is until next time, may your needles be swift and your yarns be soft.